I know we just got out of the team meeting, so I'm going to give everybody like a couple seconds to adjust before we fly right into this. Thank you all for coming, obviously. This is a
Allison can give us screen sharing potential.
Yeah. So one of the things we're going to be doing, I'll just kind of talk while you're getting all this stuff, is we're going to share we have a PowerPoint presentation. We spend probably about a half hour doing this whole thing. But before we get started that, I just want to say, like, there's a ton of information in this, and that's really by design. That's because this is more than just showing somebody a house and they like it, they write an offer, and then that's it. You want to be able to show your value, and you also just want to let the people know, like, this is that you're the expert. You remember all this stuff, so they don't have to. And when they and that they can't do this on their own if they're kind of on the fence about whether or not to go without that's somebody who can be their agent. Give me just a second here.
I might have to call her one second because we have everything already. So what do you want to call her? And I'll talk about, so before we sit down with somebody for a buyer consultation, we always send them, like, we'll had a conversation with them. We try and have you're gonna make me the thing. We try and have a conversation with them and do this presentation before we go look at any houses is always the goal. And so then what we do is we send them an email with information. Actually, I want to do the Google form first. We send them in. Right now, we're doing email. Typically we used to have a folder that we would give them. So we have an email we send them with information, everything that's in our buyer packet, and then we also send them a link to fill out this form just to gather some information. So we ask them things. How does, what's your email address? How does somebody win with you? How does somebody lose with you? What do you feel you have the right to expect from me as your real estate consultant? And people will answer those questions. They are not optional, and they'll tell you what they want you to know. Contact information, and then we also ask them, what's your best method of contact? Just so we have.
There's also space for additional contact in case it is like, a couple or partners or brother and sister or whatever the case may be. So that way all the important parties are all together. So we want to make sure we're including someone. A lot of time, like, some of our worst experiences have been like, we didn't realize that, like, we had somebody else that we had to include with everybody. With everything. We thought it was like primarily this person's job, and suddenly there's a partner or a spouse that we didn't know about.
So we try and grab all that information ahead of time. Anything else we should know about contacting you, just so we have that information as well right away. And then I made this form in Google Forms. I can share it too, but I grabbed this all from, I went to the WRA convention 2 years ago, and there was an agent who was speaking there who shared it. So I took it and we adapted it for our needs. We also grabbed date of birth right away, just so that we've got that to put in command. That way it's not awkward later asking what their birthday is. And then their needs and their goals. So do you have children? Do you have pets? Where do you work? What's your job title? What's prompting your move? When do you need to be there? Have you received a formal pre-approval letter? If no, would you be open to using who we recommend? If yes, which lender and loan officer? Pre-approved price range. So we kind of have a nice mix, and then it gets into their new home. So we know all of this information before we sit down, because we get an email notification to say that they filled out this form, and we can look through all of this ahead of time. So is it, school's important? Do you want a house that's move-in condition? And there's always an option for others. So if they want to put their own option in there, they can. How many bedrooms, bathrooms? Do you need a basement? What else should we know? And that's it.
So this kind of goes hand in hand with basically how we run all of our business. Try to gather as much information as possible. So whether that's before, in this case, we're talking about buyers, but we did the same thing with listings as well. Gather as much information before you actually meet them. This way, you're prepared. There's nothing worse than coming in there and just being blindsided by some very obvious fact that's important to them, but it's now brand new information to you. So this gets to the root of a lot of that stuff ahead of time. And then, yeah, we'll do a presentation either in person or over Zoom. We've been doing the presentation over Zoom, for the last 4 months, and we're pretty much we've pretty much got it perfected. It's kind of the same.
It's basically, and this is the presentation we did before when we met in person, but before it was just that we had the folder to give them. Now we email them the information. Nothing else has really changed. So this is also something that we were given and we just adapted it. More than happy to share. So, I mean, we can go through it and do it as if y'all are buying a house. It's like, there's some level of like conversation and conversation pieces, but really it's just, this is our consultation. So we can, I guess, is that okay with you guys if we just go through it? Yeah. So thank you. Okay. Cool.
So this kind of starts with top real estate myths. All up right away. And a lot of this is just stuff that they may have preconceived notions about, or may have some kind of idea about what's going about what they think they know. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. There's stuff I like to point out here, like the one about Zillow. It's important to address the kind of elephant in the room. I know a lot of agents don't like to talk about Zillow or talk about Zillow as the enemy, but whether you love them or hate them, they're still like the #1 real estate website in the world. So you might as well acknowledge that they're out there and your client is probably using it.
Yeah. So what we'll do usually is, this is usually the first screen that we'll have up. This is, if you're meeting in person, this is a nice time to like, hey, did you want a glass of, did you want a water? And you go get them a water and you leave this up. There's not a lot of conversation that has to be had about this. If you know that somebody has something, like they're really worried about inspection right away, you could talk, just, it's a quick, this is not like a go through each line item. This is mostly just, so if you guys all were our buyer right now, we just say, these are some things that a lot of people think that buying a house is just like HGTV, but just want to let you know there's a lot of misconceptions out there. So these are just some things that we want you to keep in mind. We'll talk about home inspection. We'll talk about the current market right now, but just some things to keep in mind. Oops. There we go. And our goal for you really is that we're not going to sell you a house, even though our license says real estate salesperson on it. Our goal is really to be a consultant for you, to give you the information to help you make the best decision for you and for your family. It's not our house, it's not our money, but we're just there to guide you.
So when we go on showings, I'm just as likely to point out, positive things as I am about negative things about the house, and based on what we talk about, what I know is important. So if we spot something that doesn't feel like it's totally right, we're going to point that out. I'm not just going to sell you the house because it happens to be the one we're in.
So this is some information. This is looking at all of last year, 2019, for single family, duplexes, and condominiums. How many homes sold per county, average sale price, list to sale price ratio, and number of days on market. And this is just data that we pulled from the MLS. The important thing that side note, the important thing for us to point out right now is really list to sale price ratio. But you can kind of use this to whatever information you want to share. Sometimes people say that they they don't want to get a pre-approval, but then you talk about the houses, look how quickly things are going on the market. You need to be ready. Right now, the big news is how competitive it is for buyers. And so we talk a lot about how list to sale price ratio 2019 was 99%. So that means that there were some houses that sold for less than list price. There were a lot of houses that we saw that went for over asking price. So it's not like buying a car where the list price is the top and you're negotiating below that. There's a lot of people who are buying houses for over asking price.
And then now we have the home buying process. At this point, you've made the decision to buy, or you're close to making that decision to buy. You've got your mortgage pre-approval, so you've talked with the lender, and if not, then that's going to be probably the next step, because here we are, you've found a realtor, that's us. And then the next step is doing the buyer's presentation. So isn't this great? We're already at step 4 of the process. So it's like we're almost done.
Yep.
We'll talk about buyer agency, and then we'll set you up for automatic emails, so you get showing information. When you see a house you like, we'll set up a showing so you can go out and actually look at it firsthand. If you really, really like it and you decide you want to write an offer, we'll do that. And then we'll write a great offer so it gets accepted.
That's buying a house. That's it. No, not that. So then when we're when you're writing the offer itself is 10 pages. It's a lot of legal definitions, a lot of things to know, and we're going to go through it section by section and make sure you understand everything that you're writing in the offer. But the thing to know is that there's only so many decisions to make when you're making an offer. So the first decision is going to be your offer price, and we'll help guide you through that when the time comes. The next decision to make is earnest money. How much money do you feel comfortable putting down? And the earnest money, we've talked about this before, how that is the money that you're putting down to show that you're serious about your offer. Typically in our market, we see oftentimes 1% of purchase price. Generally, the lowest that we see is $1,000 to show that you're serious, but it does have to be an amount that you're comfortable having deposited into a trust account. It's held there until closing. It goes towards your closing costs and your cash to close. But just know that that's a decision that you'll be making when we write the offer. A next decision to make would be what is included with the purchase and what's excluded. So a lot of times the sellers will be selling their appliances with the house. Sometimes other things will be there in the inclusion section, and same with excluded. And of course, we'll go through as well. Fixtures are always going to be included, so things like light fixtures and cabinetry, but anything additional.
You may also find some items that are specifically in the MLS that's listed as negotiable, like for instance, backyard play sets. A few times I've seen those where it's not included in the price, but it's kind of up to you to write it into the offer or make some kind of other arrangement.
And then the next decision will be closing date. So normally you want to pick a date that works for you. We want to pick a date that's advantageous to the seller. So that's something that once you're interested in a house, we will always reach out to the listing agent and find out if the seller has a preferred closing date. And if that works for you, let's use that one. Otherwise, 45 days is kind of an average. Soonest you'd ever want to do would be realistically, we need to confirm with the lender, but typically fastest you'd ever want to do would be 30 days. And then we always recommend having a home inspection done. So that'll be something that we'll make a decision about, and then whether or not you want to have a radon test. And we sent you that form about radon, that information sheet. So that'll be something, if you have questions about it, we can talk about that too. Whether or not you'd want to have a home warranty, we also give you that flyer about home warranties, and if that's something that would be the right situation for this offer. A lot of times with competitive offers, we'll see those not being asked for for the seller to pay for it, but that's something we can talk about when the time comes. And then whether you want to ask for a closing cost credit to help with your cash that you're bringing to closing would also be something else. And really that's another thing that in a competitive market, we're not seeing as many people ask, but the big thing to know would be, if you do need to ask for that closing cost credit, that the seller is going to see that as the offer price minus your closing cost as the final price that you're offering.
And I want to really negotiating the sale. And so after you've written an offer, you can send over to the other agent. There's kind of only a couple of things that can happen. A great thing to happen would be just accept the offer as is, no further negotiation required for acceptance. But a more likely scenario is a counter offer, and a counter offer is not necessarily a bad thing. It actually puts everything back in your hands and just makes the offer more ideal for the seller. They may counter on price, but they may also counter on like one of the contingencies or the closing date or something else that would make it ideal for them.
when we're in multiple offer situations, we've seen more and more that sellers are just choosing one offer and rejecting the rest. So that's the other scenario too. So always write your best offer to start, because
you can't count on getting a counter. Yeah.
And then once we have the accepted offer, there's going to be certain times that we can negotiate throughout the sale. We might write an amendment based on, well, not so much based on earnest money, but based on home inspection and testing, after appraisal. And then we would have, the next step would be loan commitment that we, maybe something that we need to make an amendment for, if anything. And then, let's see, let's go back to, this slide is one that I've always wanted to adjust because it doesn't flow well. So that's your inside baseball. It flows weird because you talk about what happens after.
But I think it is worth just going to like the next step. We do the pre-closing walkthrough, and that's usually about 3 days before before the actual closing. But
and then closing itself.
Yeah, and then closing itself.
Closing itself takes about an hour. You sign all your papers, and then you get the keys to the house.
But of course, well before closing, but after accepted offer, is a home inspection. What home inspectors will inspect is big ticket items, things such as the foundation, because they want to make sure that water doesn't get in the house, the roof, to make sure that water doesn't get in the house, plumbing for the water that's already in the house, sensing a theme here, the mechanicals like the air conditioning, the heating, and windows, again, keeping water from getting in the house, and air, things that could do major damage to the house.
They'll check your big ticket items. Electrical as well.
Yeah.
There's no water involved there.
Cosmetics are, of course, completely up to you. I think worth noting about home inspections is that you're going to find things like older water heaters, older furnaces. Old does not necessarily mean broken. Old does not necessarily mean inoperable. If it's working and it comes up with a home inspection, they may say it's near the end of its useful lifespan. But if it's not actually stopped working, there may not be much of a negotiation there. But a good opportunity for you to maybe think about purchasing a home warranty if one's not already included or you haven't already negotiated one.
We're going to talk a little bit about the back end of real estate. So just some things, what is procuring costs? So this is important for you to know when you're working with a realtor. When open houses are happening, you're more than welcome to go to an open house. It's important just to let the agent that is there hosting it know that you are already working with an agent. That way, if there's any questions about the house that you have, they can always get back to us with that information. If you see a house on Zillow, if you see a house on Realtor.com, instead of clicking that little button that says find an agent or ask an agent a question, just ask us. If you do click on that button by accident, just know you're going to get a lot of phone calls from a lot of agents, and they're all going to want to work with you. And the other thing, so for sale by owners and builders and new construction, we can always help with that as well. The big thing to know is that if you reach out to somebody else without us, real estate's kind of a funny business where even though you want to work with us, if somebody else helps you, they may be able to step in and say that they started the process with you, so they are going to have the right to finish it.
Right. And just as a side note, if you think this doesn't happen, I am literally texting a person who's a client of somebody at the North Shore's office. I found that out this morning after I've been talking to this person for quite some time about a house I'm trying to sell them. I believe at this point I probably would have procuring clause, but I'm a nice guy, so I let the other person know.
We always talk to our clients about this. If there's anything you see, talk to us. We're more than happy to help. You don't need to go find houses on your own by talking to other agents. So we're going to talk a little bit about buyer agency, why 100% of our buyers choose buyer agency. So there are certain duties that as a realtor we owe all people who we work with, whether they are a client or a customer. And we'll talk about the difference between those. But those duties are confidentiality, fair and honest treatment, reasonable care and skill, disclosure of material adverse facts. So if we know of a defect with the house, we have the obligation to disclose that. Providing accurate market information, holding those funds for earnest money, and then being objective in the presentation of offers. So a customer is somebody that we do not have buyer agency with. And in that situation, we owe them those duties. But for clients, people who we have buyer agency with, we also owe them loyalty. They're the decision maker, but we're going to give them the best information to help them make that decision. We're going to give them not just the material adverse facts, but any information that's material to them. If they say that they don't want to live on a busy road, we're going to help them figure out, is this road busy enough? Is this road quiet enough for you? Providing information and advice, so helping them find something that's going to be a good fit for them. Negotiating on their behalf is the big one. You always talk about lawyers.
Yeah, so the analogy I always use here is like, it's like coming into court to fight a traffic ticket or something like that, and or even a big case, so you're on trial for something, and just saying like, well, there's already a lawyer here for the prosecution, I'll just use that lawyer. That's what you're running into when you have one agent negotiating for both sides. If you don't have somebody who's specifically legally on your side, can you really trust them to have all of your interests held? Yeah.
So that's where the value comes in for buyer agency, is that we really help negotiate on your behalf. We work for you. Without buyer agency, we would technically be working for the seller.
Yeah.
So that's where it's important.
And that's the default. We work for the seller until we have buyer agency. Then we work for you.
Yep. And then extra things that we provide.
Yeah. So we offer the upcoming showings email. A lot of times, if we have time, I know the market works fast, but we'd like to be able to provide an email with things like the condition report or other information we might have about a home before we actually get out there, so that, again, we've done our homework, you have all the homework as well. Always keep an internet device with you. So whether that's a tablet or even just a simple cell phone, we have the ability to look up information at the showing, where the lot lines are, if there is additional information that's come to light since the last time we spoke. Our team approach, obviously with Dawn and I both here, means that someone is almost always available.
If you are a single agent, though, just take that out and don't talk about it.
Yeah.
That's not,
or you can leave it in there, and you have a buddy that's in the office who can help you with that. It's always, even if you're a single agent, probably one of the best things you can do is to have a friend in the office who can cover your business, so you can take a day off every once in a while.
Yes, that's true. Market updates after closing. So after you close, we love to stay in touch. We'd love to tell you what that kitchen renovation could do for your the market value of your house, even if you're not thinking about selling. Sometimes people just like to know. And sometimes things like refinancing, they want to know, what would my house appraise for? If you're trying to get rid of PMI at that point in your loan, we can help with that.
That's probably the biggest investment you're going to make, and it's so good to check up on that investment every once in a while.
Yep.
We offer client events and giveaways. So as of right now, we're of course doing the big cream puff event. We're looking forward to having more of the stuff that we normally do. Probably probably in the next year. It's going to be a while before we do our next big movie theater event. But those are always fun. You get to meet all of our past clients, and obviously we like to work with certain kinds of people, and we want to have their friends present as well.
Yeah. If we like working with you, it's pretty certain that we're going to enjoy working with your friends.
Exactly. We always offer recommendations for service providers. So in this industry, I kind of meet at least one or two of almost every single profession, whether that's plumbers or roofers, any kind of trades. And so if I don't have personal experience with it, I also have an entire office of over 160 agents to go back to who's had the best experience. And of course, we offer all these services for free.
So our goal is always that you are completely satisfied with the experience, that you felt in control of the process, you got to make the decisions and had all the information that you needed. What we always hope then is that you had such a good experience that you feel happy to leave us a good review on Google, on Facebook, and to help us continue to find business that way. And the same thing, that you felt so satisfied with the experience that you're happy to tell your friends and family. Last year, 75% of our business came from repeat and referral, and it's just because we try to take good care of our clients after the fact.
And we have our next steps. So we're going to fill out some forms. So if you're ready to date, which is the buyer agency form, so it's kind of making it official. The rest of the form, affiliate business arrangement disclosure notice, a very long, complicated name, but it's basically that's covering. It's a disclosure.
But our goal is really that you'd never get paperwork that you don't understand what you're signing. So even something like a disclosure form, we'll still go through it just so that you make sure you know everything that you are signing. And then we'll set up your home search in the MLS. We get you started on those emails, showings, and then
get you an accepted offer.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
And then that's when we open it up for questions. Do you guys have any questions? No.
No,
they don't.
Okay. That means we must have covered absolutely everything.
We just talk fast.
Yeah.
I'll ask a question.
Yes.
Sure.
I loved the presentation. It was awesome. It just made a lot of sense and flowed and seemed very easy. And it's timely for me and my husband because we're going on a buyer presentation next week.
Nice.
But are you going to have some of those forms that you use, or just are they on?
I can send them out. If people want to put their email address in the chat, I've got Dan and Michelle Gaz already. I can send it all out to everybody, just like what we put in, like it's all the Word documents so that you can put your own stuff on it. Take it and do what you want with it. Everything that we have, we've gotten from other people.
Take the logo out and put your logo in, or take the name out and change the name. Even the presentation, it's PowerPoint or Google Slides, either one. Very easy. Just take our picture out and put yours in.
Yeah.
Hey, Dawn?
Yes.
Yeah.
I came on late, so I apologize. I missed the whole presentation. I'm just now popping on. Anyway, we had the one source, the Google one source. So if you can drop it into that.
Okay, I can do that too.
And if you have problems doing it, just send it to me and I'll get it put into the one spot for resources under launch, under buyers.
Okay, so launch buyers. Okay. Yeah, I can put it there too. Like everything that we have has just been, I've been in the business about 5 years, and it's just been things I've taken from different people. And then especially since coming to KW, that's when we really started having a more formal presentation. And we found it's really been a nice, we have fewer problems when we go through this with people, as like tedious as it sometimes can be. Like it is important to put it all out there and set expectations from the start. And I think people see it as a little bit more professional.
Yeah.
When it's possible to come into the office and sit down and go through this, or even doing it over Zoom, it makes a difference.
Right. You're not just talking at them for 30 minutes. You have like some visual aids there.
Yeah.
It's not like our visual aid is really that complex, but it's really helpful to have something else that's part of this.
And we do go through at the same time. I can explain it to you. Like I roll right into the buyer agency agreement and the disclosure form, and then when we've been doing this on Zoom, I just switch screen share and okay, now we're going to go over the buyer agency agreement. I zoom in so that we can take a look. We're going to go through this section by section. And I always say, even if you're not ready to sign it today, this way when you are ready to sign, we've taken the time to go through it. And then 9 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, just send it over. I'll sign it right now. And if not, then it's like they'll sign it the next day.
It's up to you how you set up your buyer agency, obviously, but ours is always set. The price range is up to $1 million because that's all we're insured for. It's up to $1 million.
Which may or may not be true. I don't know.
That's what Scott told us. So.
Yeah. But it's a blanket. So this is the blank. There's no, this is not their buyer agency. This is just a buyer agency agreement. And so I can go through that too. And then we go right into, and so when we're doing it over Zoom, I screen share like this, and then we screen share the MLS as well. And so we set up their search with them live. And if we're doing it in the office, we do it where you can screen share on the big TV so that they can see exactly what we're seeing. There's no secrets. It's all out there. So do you guys, y'all have seen the buyer agency agreement. If it's helpful to hear somebody go through it, I can do it. If you have questions or want to talk about something else, we can do that too.
Would it be helpful if they role played everyone? Is that your preference, or are there any other questions that you would regarding buyer's consult that you can ask the questions to Dawn and Zach? Since I missed the beginning, did you already do a role play? I apologize.
So we role played with you as if you guys were there on a Zoom.
Okay.
This is so we talked a little bit, Kathy, we send out all of our information in an email ahead of time
Okay.
with a buyer, what's it called? Questionnaire.
Yeah, there's a questionnaire, like a Google form that they can fill out that has all the information, their name, their contact info, all the stuff that we want to know about them, so that essentially they're doing homework for us. If that's one thing I can stress to everybody, is that like, do have as much information and do as much recon beforehand as possible. So have the answers to as many of these questions as possible. Yeah. Because you're going to get to know them a lot better, and that way it's a lot easier to just kind of, when they come in, to talk about hit the ground running.
So we don't come in and say, do you have kids? Because we've already had that conversation. We try and do as much upfront and talk about it in like a time saving. Our buyer consultations are typically, unless it's somebody that I get chatty with, typically we try and spend an hour. It's about a half-hour presentation, and then the rest of the time is going through the buyer agency agreement and setting up their MLS search.
The form also can give you a lot of light on things that they haven't even talked about, but now. So they say, "Oh, I've got 3 dogs." And we think to ourselves, "Well, they're back in the condo. They're going to need someplace with a larger yard." So even if they don't say that out loud, you're going to think in your back of your head, it's like, "Oh, they've got a collie, they've got a Dane, they've got," it's like whatever it is, they need space for these animals. Same thing with how many kids they have, or whatever their profession is. That's going to help determine what's the ideal house for them.
Do you guys have any objection handlers? If they say, well, I want to use Quicken Loans, or something of that nature. So if we were role playing, and it's like, because that can be something that can come up that could be a problem.
So what we'll do in that situation, if they say they're pre-approved with Quicken Loans, or something like that, we have had a lot of personal experiences to rely upon. So we always say, so Kathy, if you wanted to use Quicken Loans, and Quicken does a lot of loans, they do a lot of business, and that can be a really good option for some people. My only concern for you is that they're not local. And we've had some situations where we had a buyer who were here in Central Time Zone. Their loan officer was in Michigan on Eastern Time, and the underwriting department was located in Arizona, and they're either Mountain or Western Time. So we're on 3 different time zones, and we had issues throughout the whole transaction with communicating between our client and the loan officer, and the loan officer and the underwriter. And we actually ended up they were selling and buying. So we're at the closing table for their sale. And that was when we got clear to close for their purchase. So it can be a good situation. We'd really recommend that you talk to somebody locally. We've got lenders that we can recommend that are in the area, that will really be somebody that if you have a question, they're there. Their underwriting department is down the hall from them, and it tends to be a smoother transaction from start to finish.
Not to mention, it never hurts to get a second opinion. So if you're shopping for a loan, shop at least 2 or 3 places to make sure you're getting the best rate, the best experience possible. If the buyer or whoever feels that the Quicken's the best option for them, I want them to have at least tried some other routes before ultimately settling back on Quicken.
Perfect answer. The one caveat that I add to that, and you said it in a roundabout way, is I always say most real estate takes place on weekends and evenings. And if it's an institution that only has 8 to 5, Monday through 5 business hours, then it puts us kind of in a conundrum if we need to get some advice from the lender after hours and on weekends. But perfect answer. And how do you handle the objection of, I'd really rather not sign the buyer's agency right now. I'm just not comfortable signing it. You've explained everything beautifully to me, but I just, don't want to sign the contract at the moment.
Okay, that's fine. You don't have to sign today.
Yeah, we don't make them sign.
So what I'll usually do is we went through it. So do you have any questions about it? We also went through that whole section about how you can get out of the contract if you don't like working with us anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So you know that if you, for some reason, something changes.
Some folks have taken it home
Yes.
and thought about it. Some folks have waited a day or two.
Yeah.
But realistically, I won't show more than one house to somebody who I don't have buyer agency with. I'm not going to show any house to somebody who doesn't have a pre-approval. So if they don't want to sign, they can be someone else's problem.
Yeah. So
Great advice. Great advice.
yeah. So we'll.
Janami raised her hand,
Yeah.
so I want to make sure
Okay.
do you still have that question?
Oh, yes. So I was wondering, what if you end up giving this presentation to somebody who's already purchased a home before? Where would you start the presentation after they say that?
So we would still do the same presentation, but it's more than a conversation about, okay, this is what home inspectors will inspect. How was your home inspection experience last time? So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that. And sometimes they'll say, you know, I don't even remember. And so then it's like, oh, okay, so just a reminder, they do, you know, they're looking for big ticket items. But it's the question that is, what was your experience like last time with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
If they're turning around and buying another home really quickly, like within 3 years, 3 years is a long time. A lot of stuff.
And a lot of this
changed.
is a
Yeah.
blur.
Yeah.
Too. But
No,
that's,
we've come across people that might have purchased one like 15 years ago, and they think they know everything,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and like, oh no, I've seen this before, and you know, statements like that. So I was wondering how to counter that.
Yeah, it tends to be a quicker presentation if they
Mhm.
do legitimately have an idea of it, but it's really just, what was your experience last time for everything? It's like, so
Got it.
tell me, you know, tell me about this. What was this like? You know, do you remember procuring cause? Buyer agency's only been around since the 90s. So it's, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of people, what they bought like 15, 20 years ago will say like, no, I just called the sign. That wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So here's the things that have changed.
Okay.
But it's that question of, what was your experience like?
Even the online experience, like being able to find photos online.
Mhm.
You know, MLS didn't increase the number of photos that's like where it's at right now until like last year or something
Yeah.
like that. It used to be only 10 photos online.
Mhm.
You only got a real small taste of the house.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey guys, that's great advice that Zach and Don just gave. That question, what was your experience like last time? And apply it to everything, because the more information that you get, the better you'll know them, rather than you trying to anticipate what their concerns are and throwing stuff out there that they don't care about. It's always better to intake
Mhm.
rather than to, you know, provide until you know what content is important to them.
And that's also a good question if somebody's worked with an agent before. What was your experience just generally like? What did you know, why? And basically like why aren't you working with them now, but in a nicer roundabout way? Like somebody helped you last time, tell me about what happened. And they'll tell you what they did like, what they didn't like. Is this person not in the business? Do they not even remember their name? They'll tell you exactly why they're not calling them again.
Yeah.
And you can use that. And just, you know, they never stayed in touch. I do stay in touch with clients. You didn't like that they didn't tell you, if you didn't feel like you were in control of making decisions, you will be in this scenario. So use it and like, just kind of use that to your advantage, any information you can get.
I need to step out to do a home inspection, but I'll leave Dawn.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming.
Cool, thanks. Any other questions that anybody has?
I popped on probably about 5 minutes late. So I didn't catch in the very beginning, but how do you handle the objection of just getting somebody to sit down at the table with you to go through this, or to do this over virtually with that option? Or are they just ultimately resistant, and how do you handle that objection?
I think it helps that a lot of our business right now is repeat and referral. So people tend to, if we say, what we do is we meet with clients to talk about the process beforehand, they tend to just say, okay. And then if it's a colder lead, we just say, we'd like to sit down and talk to you, find out about what you're looking for, you know, talk about the process with you. And then we can go look at houses right afterwards. So we've had buyer consultations where the consult's at noon and, oh, we better hurry because we're going to go look at a house at 1:30 and I want to give you a half-hour drive time. So for us, it's a non-negotiable. And it depends on where you are in your business. I'm not at the point right now where I'm going to run out and show a bunch of houses to somebody I don't know who doesn't have a pre-approval, that found me on a website and is just looking for someone to open doors. But I will say I have done that in the past. So there's
Guys,
not a right or wrong.
be cognizant that your pre-approvals have an expiration date, and it usually is 90 days. So if you're shopping long-term with them, make sure that if you present an offer that you do have a legitimate qualified pre-approval letter.
Did that answer your question too, Mandy?
It did. I'm just curious as to how you've handled it. And like you, when I first got into this, I was very much, ooh, somebody called me for a showing.
I'm gonna
Ran
run
right out there, and yeah, you're all excited. I've had experiences where we're signing buyer agency on the hood of a car. So
Yep.
we're explaining it in the kitchen of a house during a showing. Not ideal. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was curious as to how you've overcome those objections in the past in order to
It's definitely a
get this to be
process.
successful process for you and your business.
Yeah. It's definitely because it used to be the same. When I first started, I didn't know any better. And it was like, well, I'll show you a couple and then we should talk about this. And it's like, now it just seems everything goes, there's less time wasting, fewer people just wanting to get in and look, and maybe they actually have an agent and they just called me because their agent wasn't available. That doesn't happen as much when we go through when they have to set aside an hour to talk to us. You do the same thing if you were meeting with a lawyer. You do the same thing if you were meeting with any other professional who was helping you. And so that's how we try to see it. Alex, I think you had a question too.
Yeah, can you just kind of cover how you go about letting them know that, like, if they're not happy, they can walk away?
Oh, sure. So that is in my description of the buyer agency agreement. So we go through the whole thing. It's okay. This is the form that's going to say that you're fine with working with me as your buyer's agent, working on your behalf. And the section here, I don't have to go through the whole thing with you guys, but so I get down, I say, we're going to talk about all the parts of it, even if it is just a definition. And then got that whole page that we skip. I'm going to go up a little. I think it's on page 5, if I remember correctly. So this section here on page 5, there's a section that says termination of agreement. So if it comes to the point that, and this is usually where we kind of laugh, if you decide that you don't want to work with me anymore, you really don't like us anymore, this section here talks about how you can end the agreement. All you need to do is let me know in writing. An email is totally fine, but I just need something in writing to say that you don't want me to be your buyer's agent anymore. And then we'll sign a one-page amendment to end our agreement. We don't charge any early termination fees, but just that's the section where you can get out of it. And by the same token, if for some reason we date these for a year, if for some reason you haven't found your new home in a year, we can do a one-page extension of that with same deal, just a one-page. So I say it right in there, and that's usually a thing where I think if somebody's had any doubts about what am I getting myself into, I'm going to tell them right there, this is how you get out of this contract. If you don't want to be in it anymore, no hard feelings. It's right there in the contract. And that's usually when people are like, oh yeah, I'll sign, no problem. Like, you're telling me how I get out of it. Like,
Thank you.
Dawn,
How are you handling the discussion in regards to buyer agency fee?
it is just, so we do charge a buyer agency fee. And then, so this is the conversation that we're having after we've gone through the whole presentation. They see the value that there is in working with us. So we've built that value in there. And then when we're talking through this, we go through, this is describing the home that you are purchasing, up to $1 million. Excluded properties would be commercial properties because you're looking for a residential home. Excluded properties subject to a prior agreement. So this would be if you had a buyer agency agreement with another agent. We confirm, no, you haven't. Compensation then is the section. Remember, we said that for the most part, most of the commission is paid by the seller, and that's defined in the MLS. And like we said, we also work with for sale by owners and new construction. Commission is not paid until you close on a property. So if for something changes and you never purchase a home, you're never going to owe any commission to us. And then the other thing that we charge is a $595 success fee that's due upon successful closing. So same thing, if you don't close, you don't owe that amount. And then otherwise it just gets wrapped into your closing costs, the cash that you bring to close. And then you go to the next page. So it's just the way it's, we don't offer it as a negotiable item. The only time that we do waive it is sometimes when people are both selling and buying at the same time. Then we tell them, because you are paying commission on both sides, in this case, we're going to waive that for you. But everybody does it their own, however you choose to do it. We've only had it come up as an issue once, and that was somebody that we originally met as a for sale by owner, and she wasn't excited about working with agents in general. So she's a great person, but she's the only person we've ever had an issue with.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Dawn, do you, how do you make the presentation different for someone who just wants vacant land?
We don't honestly run into that a lot. And I would say I wouldn't consider myself to be a vacant land expert by any stretch of the imagination. The only people that we have right now, I guess it's same thing. It's a lot of fact finding beforehand. So are they buying vacant land? What's the purpose for buying it? Are they going to be having their own builder? Are they buying a lot and land package? Kind of where are they in the process? But then I guess I would just go through the process of what they need to know if they've bought before, what's different about vacant land for them to know, which I'm not the person to ask about that.
Okay.
But if you come up with something, let me know.
So I have another question. So if a property listed, like I've seen a couple that were listed at 2% commission, like what does your conversation look like then?
So we don't make them, because we do the 595 success fee as well. I just go by what's in MLS. So if it's 2.0, if it's 3.0, whatever it is in MLS. So that's why we have the or as stated in MLS. We do have a client right now that is buying a for sale by owner, and luckily the seller is willing to pay 2.4%. But otherwise I just go by what's in MLS. If they weren't paying the success fee, it might be different. But because they're also paying a $595 fee, we don't worry as much. It's a good question. So do you guys, has anybody done anything that's different? Like, do you guys usually set up MLS searches with your clients there, or do you tend to like take the information and set it up and send it? Like, how do you guys do yours?
I just do it later after the meeting.
At least in my experience, once I've confirmed them as a lead who's interested in working with us, I've always seen it as an incentive to set them up on a home finder through MLS. I mean, it doesn't hurt them, or it doesn't hurt us really.
Yeah, and we do have some leads that get emails because the same thing, if they're not actually looking at things, but like, you know, we've had some people who've been on for like 2 years, and it's like, she calls when I answer, but she's not ready yet. She just wants to see what's out there.
Sure.
Cool. Mandy, what do you do with your clients right now?
Mine's been a combination, but I have the ones that are, you know, tire kickers. Maybe if I see the right thing, we might be interested in making a move. And I have no problem setting them up on the MLS if it's somebody that I have a strong enough relationship with that I'm confident in that they're not gonna, you know, turn around and go to somebody else to do that sale. But the majority of my business, like yours, has come off of referral. So I haven't really had a lot of major issues in that regards. So the majority of mine are getting set up on MLS, and then we're actually having the presentation.
Nice. It's a good way to, like, we had somebody, I don't want to say like it weeds out people that aren't, it weeds out people that are not serious, but also like if you sit down with somebody and like you can see that you are not going to be a good fit, you know this sometimes like from sitting down together, like a serious conversation, like, oh yeah, like this is not, you're making that call too. Do you want to work with them? Do they want to work? Is this a good fit? And is this going to be advantageous for everybody? And there's been some people where it's like, you know what, that's okay that this presentation ended a little quick and we're, you know, she's going to go do her own thing and I could help her find somebody if she needs, but it's not a good match.
The nice thing is now is I've been trying to utilize the app a little bit more. So if I have somebody who's contacting me just out of curiosity and it's very in that initial stage, I've been trying to direct them to use the app more than actually setting them up on an MLS search. But if it gets down to where they're starting to get a little bit more serious and we haven't had that buyer consult yet, getting them to sit down and have that buyer consult and saying, you know, just to get some clarity as to how serious you are about things, how you want to move forward, discuss your timeline, etc. Getting that appointment and then getting them on an actual solid MLS search usually helps. Just because if they're not serious enough yet, I mean, obviously that's time that I'm taking to set them up to do that. That's not necessarily procuring cost so much for me if I do that, if they're not serious enough. But because there's just so many hiccups yet with the app yet too that, you know, I just want to make sure I'm touching base with them, going back and saying, okay, you've been on the app. What do you think of the app? And if the app's not working for them, then that's when I'm trying to push a little bit more to let's sit down and have this serious conversation and let's get you on the MLS search and go from there.
Yeah, it's a good lead generation tool. We have some clients who are seriously looking that also use the app, but we always tell them like the MLS is going to be, that's where the information starts. And that's going to be your most up-to-date, most accurate info. And it's got all the data. I don't think the app still has, it doesn't have the text data on there for houses yet. So I think there's a lot of details missing. So it's good for those situations where somebody's just getting started and good pictures and good connection.
Do you search out FSBOs for your buyers? If you're having a hard time, and then contact them and try to see if they'll pay the commission?
Yeah, so we do. It depends on the buyer, depends on what they're seeing. We actually had somebody I know somebody who's selling with another, they know multiple agents, and I know that they were planning to sell, but I also know that they're very budget conscious. And I had a conversation with them about, I thought that their house would be a really good fit for one of our clients, and reached out to them to see if that's something they'd be open to, because they hadn't signed anything yet. And it turned out that my client found a house first, and then we have another transaction right now with a for sale by owner. So it's kind of a mix of looking places that people post, and then also, just keeping an eye out if we're driving through, you know, after a showing and we notice a for sale by owner sign and it looks like it could be a good fit, give them a call.
Yeah, I've done that as well. And it's worked out to actually be quite successful, especially in this market with inventory being so low.
No competition sometimes, because if they're just putting a sign in the yard, how many people are actually calling that aren't agents? You know, so it's been a good tactic. We have at times done more or less. It depends on how much inventory they're seeing that they're liking.
And with the FSBO, the nice thing about it is if you have a for sale by owner who's sitting there trying to sell this property by themselves, and they may be taking advantage of the fact that the one down the street from them just went on the market because they know the traffic's going to be there to that new property. So they put the for sale by owner out front just to see what's going to happen. But what they don't seem to realize is all the other things that go into it. So what I've been doing on some of my showings is going around and actually driving around the neighborhood. If I know this is a property that just came on, see if there's any of those for sale by owner signs and start having those conversations with those owners. The most recent FSBO one that I did for my buyer, I had a really good conversation with the seller and explained to the seller of, you know, I understand that you may not want to pay this buyer agency fee for me bringing the buyer to you, but let me explain to you what else comes along with that fee for you to pay that.
Mhm.
Because they don't seem to realize that we're working both sides of the sale
Yes.
to an extent.
You
I've
have
had
to-
situations where they've gone with discount where it's a discount broker that's actually handling it, but they have limited representation. You're
Mhm.
still, in a way, still handling both sides of that because you're still having more conversations with that seller than their actual broker is.
Yes. Yeah, so ours right now, we have, there's some basement work being done. So it was a nice conversation with the seller about why it had to be done before closing and we can't do it after the fact. And yeah, it's a little bit different, but it's a good, like this was a buyer that in his price range, we would have been outbid every single time because he could not go $20,000 over. And he was, you know, looking for a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath house. And you can't find those, you know, in that price range in the neighborhoods he was looking. So it can be a really good option. So it's a good question. Any other questions before we wrap up? Otherwise, I'll put the information that we put into our buyer consultation folder. You can, like, I can give you a copy of our Google form, but then, you know, make your own. And then the presentation too, but I'll also email it to you guys so you guys put your emails there so I can send all that to you too. And it's really just about practicing and making it your own and figuring out what you know, what you want to talk about, what you want to say, and points you want to hit on, and things you want your clients to know before they start looking. So thanks guys for coming.
Thank you guys for doing this. I think it's awesome that you guys include the procuring cause. I think that's something that we often end up looking past, like it's an oversight on our part.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really something that's kind of important to touch base on, especially if this market changes over to a buyer's market.
Janami, I think it is being recorded, so I think it's going to end up going on the YouTube channel.
Awesome. Thank you. Perfect.
Cool. Thanks
All
for
right.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.